I wanted to just really quickly talk about the journalists who have been murdered, Katie. I mean, especially Anas al-Sharif, 28 years old. 28 years old. I mean, to think of how young that is and how horrific it is that Israel smeared this young man as a Hamas operative. And even if he was,
Right.
nothing justifies extrajudicial murder. That's what courts are for.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of this is sick, even if you're running on the premise that someone equals Hamas equals justified murder. That is sick. But let's just look at Anas al-Sharif. What a long con, right? Because this man graduated from Gaza City's Al-Aqsa University with a mass communication degree. He specialized in radio and television in college. Then he volunteered for a media network. And then he won Best Young Journalist in Gaza in 2018 for his amazing, diligent reporting on the ground. This was a man who dedicated his entire adult life to investigative journalism and reporting, even before he got the job with Al Jazeera. So, and it's the same with Ismail al-Ghul. I mean, he obtained a bachelor's degree in journalism at the Islamic University of Gaza, and then he studied media and journalism. He was 27 years old. I mean, just wrap your mind around that. Hassam Shabat was 23 years old. I mean, it's just sick. It's sick that you could have press outlets regurgitating IDF press releases about these young, heroic men being Hamas operatives. How dare you? How dare you? Where is the outrage? Where is the outcry? These Western journalists will never even fathom what heroism is, what selflessness is, because journalists in Gaza are the bravest human beings alive. They know that their work is a death sentence because Israel openly hunts them and threatens to kill them, but they do it out of duty to their people. Not only out of duty to their people, but out of defiance to the world that ignores their suffering, gaslights them, denies their reality,
Right.
and they do it regardless. And that's something that I don't think anyone can really wrap their mind around. It's unfathomable. It's incomprehensible. And so if people like Clarissa Ward who leave that TikTok and just think, yep, I did my part, checked a box,
Right.
you will never
Years
understand.
into it. Years into it.
Years into it.
Yeah. It is also the rank hypocrisy of imagine someone from a Muslim country calling BBC journalists mouthpieces for state terror and then accusing them of being bankrolled by terrorists, then beginning to murder these journalists. Like, do you think that the media, Western media, would be okay with that?
I mean, it's the whole framework of the people who work for my enemy are deemed enemy combatants. I mean, the fact that, people like me and Chris Hedges and Lee Camp, we were all considered people who could have their entire body of work removed from the internet because we were unsavory characters working for Russian media. I mean, it's
It's just
it's
so funny
absolutely
because it's like that's
cartoonish.
exactly what they'd say. Like the Russians are the
The
communists. They
Russian,
don't have
yeah,
to be,
it's like
they're literally disappearing people from the internet.
yeah, disappearing people from the internet. And I hate to even compare that to what's going on in Palestine. Obviously, there's no comparison at all, but it's just the idea that Al Jazeera employs people and those people are journalists and they are our colleagues, but because it's Al Jazeera, I mean, let's not forget what even the CIA and State Department did after
Right.
9/11. They paid tens of millions, potentially more than that, to decipher the cryons and lower thirds of Al Jazeera because they were so concerned that it was terrorist messaging. I mean, this is how cartoonish it's become. Look at France 24, BBC, Voice of America. Those are all arguably, all the journalists working for those outlets, not only are they state funded and they could be called agents of the state according to the same logic, but those states are actually genocidaires. I mean, these are the states committing genocide, colonialism, imperialism, war.
Right.
So, I mean, just by the same logic, it is just absolutely insane
Right.
and horrific that anyone can co-sign to this. I mean, like 2 years into this and the silence, the egregious, deafening silence from all of the journalists in the world about the systematic slaughter of Palestinians who work in media. I can't wrap my mind around it, Katie. The only thing I can rationalize is that they don't think Palestinians are human.
Right,
They
yeah,
are bigots and racists, and they are so comfortable with their status that they don't wanna lose their job. Times are tough, Katie. So
right,
that letter sent out by the BBC with 200 BBC employees, I was very pleasantly surprised. I just thought, "Finally, almost 2 years into this, we finally have a mass letter by BBC journalists signing about how horrific it is that their network is co-signing all this horrific genocide propaganda." Well, consider my shock when I opened the letter and it was 200 anonymouses. I
right,
was like,
right.
"What?"
Anonymi, yeah. Wow, really brave. Yeah,
Wow, really brave, guys, really brave. And look at the New York Times. The day after, five reporters were bombed in a journalist tent outside Al-Shifa Hospital. What did the New York Times say? They published an article that said, "What is Al Jazeera? What is this network that Israel keeps targeting as a terrorist mouthpiece? Let's find out."
right.
Well, the network denies it, but let's really dig in here. I mean, this is complicity.
Yeah, of course,
This
yeah,
is
the slaughter of
manufacturing
half,
consent for the
yeah,
systematic slaughter of your colleagues.
right. Yeah, and Reuters putting in Hamas, killed a journalist, Israel said was Hamas, operative, like, you put that in the headline? Like, don't you aren't you shouldn't you be better at being, like, state stenographers? Like, don't there's an art to it, you wanna be a little subtle, you don't wanna be that obvious.
Well,
There
especially
was
because Reuters and AP are supposed to be like press wires. It's like, okay, we
right,
get it, but you're not just supposed to literally reprint the IDF press release,
right,
Reuters. Like,
yeah,
use some goddamn discernment.
yeah. There's actually a clip I wanted to show, that features, I think, a framing that we never see before. I was actually really shocked that CNN let this clip remain on air. So it's Foreign Press Association President Ian Williams being asked about the killing of Anas al-Sharif and whether he's Hamas. And let's take a listen.
Association says it's outraged by the targeted killings of journalists in Gaza. Let's bring in Ian Williams, the president of the association. Ian, welcome to the program. As we've noted, we've seen repeated calls for Western journalists to be allowed into Gaza as the war approaches its 2-year mark. Just talk about, tell our viewers why that is so important to have Western journalists there to observe what is going on the ground throughout the war, and what the reaction has been and the justification when you reach out to the Israeli government demanding as much.
Well, the one of the points is we should trust Palestinian journalists as well, but there's, profound sort of racism, and the Israeli government has basically said if you're Palestinian, you're not to be trusted. Whereas I think the foreign press, the press in general, are now beginning to learn that whatever the Israeli government says has to be taken with a hundredweight of salt, because there's, what they say bears no relation to reality, and they use keywords like, the Hamas Ministry of Defense. Hamas controls the place, and I mean the Ministry of Health. Hamas controls the place. Journalists there, frankly, I don't care whether al-Sharif was in Hamas or not. We don't kill journalists for being Republicans or Democrats, or in Britain, Labour Party. Hamas is a political organization as well as a terrorist organization, perhaps, but it's not permissible to go killing people. And this was the distinct change now, is the IDF actually boasted that this was a targeted killing. And the reason they're doing that is they're not letting foreign journalists in. So Palestinian journalists are the only ones who are there, the only ones who can tell what's happening there. And what they're saying completely contradicts what's coming from Israeli spokesmen in Israel and across the world. It's quite clear they've documented the ongoing massacres, and the Israelis don't like it.
What do you mean by not caring whether Anas al-Sharif was part of Hamas? Because the Israelis have produced what they say is evidence and have longstanding statements where they say he was not only part of Hamas, but he was leading a Hamas cell. In your view, that
Oh
doesn't make him
my
fair game
god.
for Israeli targets?
Well, first of all, I don't believe it. He's been working 24 hours on journalism. He doesn't have time to work in a cell on the side.
My god.
Second point is, basically don't believe anything the Israeli government says about this. They've lied and lied and lied. They buried a whole medical team.
I mean, by the way, before I'm gonna keep playing this, but this woman, her name is Biana Golodryga, and she has pushed the Hamas rape hoax a lot.
Mhm.
People could say that she has blood on her hands.
Well,
I
what
don't think
what long-standing documents?
oh,
She
yeah.
said they produce long-standing
Yeah,
documents.
yeah, can she I would love to see that lady. This long stand what does that even mean, long-standing
Long-standing
document?
documents.
It's like
She was
her
like, "Well."
Hasbara talking points are, like, fried in her brain. She can't even, like, reach for the good Hasbara talking points. So disgusting.
They've lied and lied and lied. They buried a whole medical team after denying it. They went and destroyed the evidence. They bombed hospitals, claiming there were Hamas facilities underneath, which weren't there. And the only way to conclusively disprove them was to let foreign journalists in. And they won't do that. So now they're basically sending, if foreign journalists are allowed in now, I would make sure they compose their wills before they
So
go,
these are two
because
separate.
the IDF has no compunction.
These are two separate issues you raise. I think the majority of journalists around the world, and I would imagine a lot of our viewers, would support allowing Western journalists into Gaza to see.
Wow, that is so big of you. What a principled person that you think that they should allow Western journalists in. That is so brave. Wow, you must have gone to journalism school to understand the power of journalism so well, because what an amazing thing to say.
For themselves and report for themselves what is happening in this war. But when you say you don't believe a word Israel is saying, there's been a lot of accusation thrown at Israel for not producing evidence to confirm some of the claims they've made. If they then produce evidence and you say, I don't believe it, where does that leave things?
Well, also, what evidence are you talking about? Like, it is absolutely the right thing to do to assume Israel lies by default. Like, you should never believe it until not only should they produce evidence, but like it needs to be cross-checked. Because I don't believe anything.
It's again an inverse of reality. It's like
Yeah,
the dubiousness is on Hamas instead of Israel, the notorious, pathologically lying,
right,
rogue
exactly.
nuclear armed state committing genocide. Yeah, great journalism.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. Where does that leave things?
Also, poor Israel, they've been accused of not having evidence. Come on, how can you're
They've been
gonna
accused
pick
of not
on
having
them?
evidence about the slaughtering 200 plus journalists and their families.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They're really in a bind. It's really hard for them.
Well, it leaves things. We work on the balance of proof. Our job is to challenge authority. The authority here is denying access to independent witnesses. Nobody else is allowed to go into Gaza. International organizations aren't allowed into Gaza. Journalists aren't allowed into Gaza. Reuters, AP, CNN, BBC are not allowed into Gaza. Now, what does that give us? Sort of more than a little hint that things are going on there that the Israeli government doesn't want you to know about or doesn't want you to witness. What other conclusion are you going to give? There's a presumption in favor of Israel in a lot of this, which is totally unjustified after recent experience. I think, and they've targeted journalists before in the West Bank as well. By the way, we're looking at Gaza, but journalists have been assaulted and killed in the West Bank as well for witnessing what the settlers are doing, let alone what the IDF is doing. So I think we're really, it's not. It doesn't do Israel any great favors for basically making everything they say totally questionable.
All right, Ian Williams, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for the time, President of the Foreign
Thank you.
Press Association.
I bet she like cried after that or threw up.
Wow. That was really heavy. That was really heavy because it's just in the face of nothing, the grasping at straws. I mean, I just wish that he could have just said, what was the evidence? Him
Yeah,
posing with Sinwar?
yeah,
Because there's a long list of Israelis that have hung out with Netanyahu and worked for Netanyahu and interviewed Netanyahu
right.
and all of the Likud cabinet. I mean,
Of
it
course.
is so horrific. So all of those journalists are completely fair game to
Yeah.
be extrajudicially assassinated along with their families. And hey, if you kill 500 people in the apartment building, but hey, you were trying to get that journalist who interviewed Netanyahu one time. I mean, where does
Right.
this end?
I don't think that Biana would be cool with that. Something tells me. It's so disgusting.